advancements have had a positive effect on our lives, the abuse of technology can be a poison that affects every child and family. Research has shown that people may find themselves addicted to the internet, to cybersex, or to other online dating activities. As a result, therapists are seeing more and more clients who are presenting internet-related concerns. Many of the issues that are presented to therapists are related to sexual infidelity. Problems involving the internet result from viewing and downloading pornography, reading, writing sexually explicit letters and stories, interactive affairs, and much more. So what is the government doing about internet-related concerns? In April of this year, President Trump signed a bill that gives federal and state prosecutors greater power to pursue websites that host sex trafficking ads and enables victims and state attorneys to file lawsuits against those sites. The bill, nicknamed FOSTA for its title, Allows States and Victims to Fight Online Sex Trafficking Act, is already being seen around the internet as sites have shut down sex-related areas and stopped accepting sex-related advertising. This act not only helps fight sex trafficking, but it also helps diminish pornography on the internet. While this bill has great intentions on a national level, it is important for families to understand what they can do personally to prevent their children being a target for sex trafficking and pornography. It all comes back to the use of technology. When it comes to technology addiction, there are many sources available for us to reach out and to seek help. The Center for Internet and Technology Addiction website, founded by a cyber psychologist, Dr. David Greenfield, serves as one of the world's most well-known resources for neurobiological and psychological research into internet and technology addiction, dependency, and abuse. So how can you make sure technology doesn't become an addiction and take priority over your personal relationships? Recognize the value and potential with technology while also allowing yourself to plug back into life. Make sure your children understand the dangers of viewing and posting things on the internet. Try to work as a team with your loved ones and make specific times phone-free. This could simply be at the dinner table, during a family activity, or in the bedroom. This can help keep your relationships be real rather than virtual. All right, now I'm going to open up to questions.
Sorry, I forgot that I was muted. I'll go ahead. So when I hear like internet addiction, I think of like addiction recovery. So once someone like is addicted, clearly addicted, like what do you think is the best route to fixing that?
That's a good question. So for the website that I talked about, Dr. David Greenfield, he talks about how he helps children to be able to, it's not about getting rid of the internet altogether, because that's impossible. Like, we have to have technology as part of our lives, but professional treatment aims to allow the person to use the internet positively rather than compulsively. So it's helping them learn to not just do it in compulsive, but to be able to manage their use.
And I have to apologize, Emily. I got shut out in the middle of your speech. And so we're going to be recording we're going to be uploading 2 recordings, and it's going to be missing the middle part of your speech. So just make sure that you upload your speech to the instructor so she can get that missing part in the middle. And I will explain to her that it was my computer that just completely blew up and shut me out. But you started with technology addiction, and then when I managed to get back in, you were talking about the sex sites, the sex trafficking, other things along those lines, but those are just another symptom of a way of how they get us addicted to technology, right?
Yes, yeah. So I talked about how sex trafficking and pornography, like when people become addicted, those things are more available on the internet, and it leads to other problems, and how the government, there's not really any policies or laws concerning internet addiction, but that was one law that I saw that got passed concerning internet use was sex trafficking. So that's how I connected it to how the government has a program or law.
Okay, I was just wondering how those two connected. So
yeah, and just kind of how, going back to my speech, I said, Sorry, one sec. So it not only helps, with this bill, it has great intentions on the national level to help families, but it also goes back to how it's important for families to understand the use of technology and for children to like be safe when they're using the internet.
Okay.
So my question, Emily, you talked about the family and how that is a problem with, like, technology is a problem within the family just because it doesn't make people really connect as well because it's a distraction for real relationships. So obviously our assignment is focused more on like the legislature, but like, do you feel like this is legislature issue, or is it an issue within the family? Do you feel like it needs to be fixed within like Congress and within the government, or do you think it needs to be like focused more within the community and with family? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think it all comes back to the family, but it is a society issue. I feel that technology is a great thing and there's a lot of advancements, but people are becoming addicted, which I think we need to realize as a family. And kind of the opposing view, like technology is good for people like in other parts of the world to be able to connect with other family members here. But it's important to realize the families that we're in the home with now, it's affecting the face-to-face communication, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Thank you.
I was muted too. Okay, so Elder Christofferson had talked about how that when there's a lack of internal control by individuals, then that breeds external control by the government. Do you think that it's getting to a point where people are losing so much of their internal control that the government is actually going to have to start regulating things like technology use?
That's a good question. I feel like it's hard to be able to regulate technology addiction. That's why I was having a hard time finding a law specifically on technology addiction because it's so broad. You know, there's stuff on sex trafficking and stuff like that, but I think it would be really hard to advocate for technology use, but it's definitely something worth advocating for because it is affecting relationships so intensely, if that makes sense.
So as a follow-up to that, then how can we in our communities and our families and the people that we come in contact with help people to like develop those internal controls? Because obviously we don't want the government regulating everything in our lives.
Right.
I'll throw out one example. City of Honolulu has enacted a law that says it's illegal to cross the street while you're staring at an electronic device.
So does Rexburg, Idaho.
Okay, so see, I knew Honolulu, but I didn't know of others. Here in Texas, just this year, or legislative section of September of 2017 is the first year that texting and driving was made illegal in the entire state of Texas. So there is legislation that is coming to attempt to reduce people being distracted while they're doing things, but it doesn't in any way encourage family relationships or one-on-one relationships. It just is trying to prevent the damages that can be caused when people are distracted and doing something else.
Yeah, and to go along with that, with texting and driving, there's a lot more laws about how we can't text and drive anymore, you know. And we can get a ticket if we get pulled over for texting and driving.
Well, great job.
Thank you.
Sorry, I missed the middle part of the recording.
Yeah, bummer.
Shauna just turned off her microphone.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Okay, I'm also going to start my timer to make and then I ran through it several times. Okay. Let me tell you about an 11-year-old girl named Dasani. Dasani lives in a homeless shelter with her mother, Chanel, stepfather, Supreme, and 7 siblings. The family lives in one room in a shelter deemed unfit for children. In this room they call home, the walls are rotting and filled with mice. The mattresses are worn with rusty springs poking through, and a mop bucket serves as a toilet. These conditions, along with caring for her baby sister during the night, make it difficult for Dasani to sleep. Dasani and her siblings frequently arrive at school hungry and too late for breakfast, making it hard for them to concentrate on their schoolwork. While Dasani is bright and eager to learn, she is often too tired and hungry to focus. As the school year goes on, Dasani must give up wearing her school uniforms because they are all dirty and her parents refuse to spend money on laundry. Now Dasani must wear clothes scavenged from dumpsters or donated to the poor. The family does receive some government benefits, such as food stamps, and Supreme receives survivor benefits from the death of his first wife. But these resources are gone almost as soon as they are received, spent not on trying to make a better life for the family, but on getting gold tooth fronts out of Hawk, unnecessary clothing items, and ice cream splurges. They talk of saving to move into a place of their own, but delayed gratification is not something they have experienced or understand. With the guarantee of money coming from the government each month, they simply wait for the check to arrive and the spending starts again. Neither Chanel nor Supreme have jobs and haven't for several years. Even if they did get jobs, they would likely lose some of their benefits due to what is known as the cliff effect. The cliff effect is a decrease in benefits as earnings increase. However, the increase does not equal or often even come close to the amount of benefits lost, tumbling a family back into poverty by disqualifying them for the very programs that are helping them at least keep their heads above water. When I worked at Community Action, I had a young mother come in for assistance. She was in tears because she had just come from the HEAT office, which is a program that helps with gas and electric bills during the winter months. She was refused aid because she made 72 cents more than the income limit for eligibility. Now, is 72 cents going to pay her electric bill? No. In fact, she was better off before she started working. In another scenario presented by Howard Bader, a lecturer in the Department of Economics at Towson University in Towson, Maryland, with a PhD in economics, a single mother of 2 whose wage increased from $12 per hour to $15 per hour would lose $2,885 in annual income due to the loss in government benefits. However, if this same mother wanted to continue up the job ladder and took a position earning $18 per hour, a net income of $33,023 annually, she would see a reduction in her refundable tax credit and affordable care premium benefits, and cash assistance, food stamps, housing assistance, and child care assistance would be totally eliminated, making for a total loss of $26,820 in government benefits. Why would this mother want to take an increase in wages when it greatly decreases her ability to support her family? She and her children would be better off if she kept her $12 an hour job. A research study regarding poverty was conducted with children ages 6 to 9 who live in low-income households. One of the things that came out of this study was how the children thought poor people could get out of poverty. So how did these children think people should get out of poverty? The majority felt that it would take effort on the part of those living in poverty, trying to get a good job, spending less and saving more, and not wasting money. Even young children can understand the benefits of having a good job and practicing sound money management. I urge you to enact policies that will eliminate the cliff effect and give families a fighting chance to be self-supporting. I respectfully suggest allowing working mothers and fathers to earn as much as they possibly can and take opportunities to move up the job ladder without being penalized by losing all their government benefits. Continue to supplement as needed while the family works towards self-sufficiency. Offer classes in money management and budgeting to further increase self-reliance. Not only will this save the government money, it will allow fathers and mothers to care for their families by taking higher paying jobs and moving up the job ladder while creating feelings of dignity and self-respect. Thank you. Questions?
So what would, okay, so we're talking about a single mother making $33,000 a year, and by taking that pay increase to the $18 an hour job, she loses $26,000 in benefits. So how would you recommend regulating what the benefit is. Are we establishing a poverty level of, 26 and 33 at $60,000, and so whatever they make short of 60?
So the poverty level is decided by not very good data, actually, but so there is official poverty levels. However, that poverty level is just like what a family needs to have the very bare minimum, as far as housing, food, clothing, and sometimes it doesn't even meet that. So that's why they have food stamps, even if they're like at 125% of poverty level. So what I would suggest is a sliding type scale. So for every dollar more you earn, then just $1 of your benefits is taken away. Does that make sense?
So there would be no incentive to work at all because you're matching dollar for dollar. If I stay home, I get $26,000. If I go to work, I get $26,000. There has to be some advantage to getting people to learn how to fish instead of giving them fish. So for every dollar you earn, maybe you lose 80 cents off of your, so
right.
There's now for every dollar I earn, I'm getting $1.20 instead of $1, because instead of getting $1 benefit, I'm getting, now I only lose 80 cents off of my benefit. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, I see what you're saying. Yeah. So, so the idea is to make it so they can earn enough money not to have to receive the benefits at all. So there would have to be a cap on, okay, so this is with your benefits, and so it's about $60,000 a year that she would be making with her benefits and her income. So once that she is actually making $60,000 a year on her own, then the benefits could quit altogether. Does that make sense? But in the meantime, what you're asking is, how do you decide how much to cut the benefits by how much she's making?
Right.
So I think that it's probably above my math level, but but I think that there would have to be some sort of a sliding scale, because there does have to be an incentive to work, which right now there's a disincentive to work, basically.
Correct.
So it would be, you're not going to lose all your benefits, just a portion of them, but not enough to make it so that you're living in poverty again.
Right.
Sorry, that probably wasn't a very good answer.
It was a tough question.
It was a tough question.
So my question is, what is something that we can do in order to help out those who are living in poverty?
So that was actually something that I talked about in my blog post. And this was also some of the things that the children in that one study said. They said that people could give money, clothes, food, and other goods to the poor. So what you can do to help alleviate poverty is start donating money or clothes or food or your time to just local agencies within your community, such as churches or food banks, homeless shelters, soup kitchens. Even look at like United Way and community action type organizations. They always have volunteer opportunities or needs that need to be met, especially at the holiday season's coming up.
Okay, so I kind of, with one of your scenarios that you had shared, I actually know of someone who kind of has a similar thing. She is a single mom, and I worked with her. Her boyfriend is like into drugs. She lives with him, but it's kind of, I don't know. Her situation was hard because she was getting all this government aid, but she complained that she wasn't working enough, but she was working 2 jobs. and her rent wasn't very much, but she was always coming in with like new clothes, like new expensive purses, like always going in and getting her nails and her hair done. And it would be kind of frustrating because it's like, why are you complaining about money if you're getting all this government aid because of your daughter and you're getting aid with childcare? And she told me one day that her mother was 3 months behind on her mortgage payment. So this is obviously generational poverty, or there is a lack of knowledge on how to do finances. So my question for you is, how can individuals and families be more self-reliant when all they know that is spending? Because we obviously don't want people to rely on the government when they really could rely on their own income, but they just kind of take advantage of government benefits.
So I didn't mention it in my speech, but I feel like one of the things I mentioned that providing, money management classes and budgeting classes, which could be made a requirement of, if you receive government aid, you are required to participate in these money management classes, and even like there's a program called Circles where the people in the community are actually allies for families in poverty, and this program works to get people up to 200% of poverty level. And these allies meet with their person they've been assigned to once a week and go over their budget with them and their spending with them and help them see where they can cut back, talk to them about needs versus wants, that type of thing. So there's private programs in place from non-governmental organizations, but the government could start something like that too, and which is another way that you can get involved in helping people out of poverty.
That actually kind of answered the question I had, because I really like how you mentioned to help people with money management. That was like your answer. And I was going to ask how we could do that for society, like on the government level. How do we help people manage their money with those who are struggling with not being able to manage money and just kind of living off the government in that way? So I think you answered it already.
I think if the government would take some ideas from private organizations, nonprofit organizations, that they could do a lot of good that way, or even help fund those programs so that people in those communities could take advantage of them.
Yeah.
This is kind of like off topic. This is more of a statement, but my husband and I were actually talking about this not too long ago, how it, like for the government, it's so easy for them to hand people money, but it's more difficult to teach principles, like they do a lot of giving, and yet it's not really helping people get out of a bad situation. And so the government, in order to really help people, they would really need to do more intervention, like that one program that you were talking about, Shauna, the Circles or something.
Yeah, it's called
because that's gonna like help the problem. It's not going to just like take away a symptom, kind of like what we were reading about this week. So anyway.
Yeah, and it's not a short program. It's a 18-month to 2-year commitment on both the part of the allies and the participants, because it takes a while to get out of poverty. And they talk about education and, they do job skills training and all that too. So, or like not job skills, but like how to do your resume, how to do a good job interview, that type of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Was that everyone's questions? Should I get started? Okay. In 1973, the Roe versus Wade debate took place, in which the United States Supreme Court determined that an abortion up to 3 months of pregnancy was constitutional, and that the decision on whether a woman should have an abortion should be left to the woman and her doctor to decide. Since this ruling, abortion has skyrocketed and has become an easy way out for women who do not want their child. Due to my personal experience, the issue of abortion has become more personal to me as an individual. A little while after my husband and I were married, we longed to have children. Just as the nursery rhyme goes, first comes love, then comes marriage, then a baby in a baby carriage. How hard could it really be? We started trying, but time started to tick. Weeks turned into months, and months turned into years. The dream of being a mom was being dashed month after month, and the struggle became discouraging. And soon debilitating. When I would see a pregnant woman or a small infant, I could hardly contain my broken heart. We went to medical professionals and had several tests done to find out what was wrong. Once being given a diagnosis, we started fertility treatments. After several rounds of fertility drugs and blood draws, we became pregnant, and my husband and I were elated and incredibly ecstatic. We went in for our first ultrasound, and our baby was a healthy little being. The love we had for our growing baby was unfathomable. Due to our struggle, we asked the doctor the chances of miscarriage at that point in our pregnancy, and he reassuredly told us that we had a 2% chance of miscarriage. So we left that appointment feeling calm and happy. We were having a baby. While some couples are the minority, and unfortunately we were one of them, after a physically and emotionally painful process, we lost our little baby a couple weeks after our doctor's appointment at 10 weeks and 1 day gestation. Harper, our little baby, was perfectly formed. You could see the baby's eyes, ears, nose, mouth, hands, fingers, legs, and trunk. You could even see the brain through the translucent skin. He or she was all there. There is no doubt that our little baby was a human being. Sadly, many babies or fetuses at this gestational age are terminated without a second thought. After going through infertility and pregnancy loss, abortion on demand became more real and hit home to my husband and me. In 2018, 186 abortions were conducted per 1,000 live births. In other words, that means that 18.6% of babies were not given the blessing of life. I could not even comprehend that these little perfect babies were not wanted, especially after what my husband and I had gone through. Abortion is not a selfless decision. It is the exact opposite. The issue of abortion takes an individualistic approach instead of looking at the familial consequences, particularly of the unborn. With this in mind, abortion has never been about choice. It's about escaping the consequences of the choice that was made. Choosing to terminate a pregnancy is only addressing the symptom of the problem. The way to effectively remove the problem completely is abstinence when one is not wanting a child. I believe that the best way to decrease the amount of unwanted pregnancies in the United States is to teach single individuals the importance of taking responsibility of their own actions. State and local governments should create a mandatory program where professionals explain the consequences of sex outside of marriage and the repercussions it can have emotionally and physically to individuals. By creating an action plan for teenagers and young adults, they will have a better understanding of the consequences as well as the responsibility they have over their actions. Thank you. So, leave it up for questions.
I like how you mentioned it's important for people to take responsibility, to teach individuals to take responsibility for their actions, and that sex outside of the marriage and creating an action plan for that. So how would that action plan look like in society? Because that's not in a gospel perspective, if that makes sense.
Definitely. I feel like when I was kind of going over this through my head of what could be done is I feel like that schools, I grew up in a very conservative area, so I don't know if they really talked about like contraceptives or those kinds of things in our school, or if they do in other school districts around the US. But I feel like there should be, whether it's in school or somewhere else, instead of talking about contraceptives, talk about the emotional and physical effects that happen when you're not taking responsibility. Because like it's scientifically proven that teenagers, their brain hasn't developed enough to really understand consequences, especially like some boys, they don't really think about the repercussions of their actions afterward. And so I think it's important for there to be a class, not necessarily on like safe sex, but have it be more of responsibility and having it be more focused on what to do in a certain situation and the kind of resources that they can go to help if they are in a bad situation. And have it be other than Planned Parenthood, like have there be some other agencies, whether it's adoption agencies. I looked up, sorry, this is probably more information than you're wanting, Emily, sorry. But I looked up the adoption website for the United States, and for every child that is adopted, there are 36 couples longing for a child. So these children are wanted, like these babies would be cared for, but I don't think that's a choice that's really being offered to them. And so I think by having a class where you talk more about those options and taking that responsibility for that action and for that consequence, you're going to have a little bit more effect for teenagers and young adults.
Thank you.
So my question kind of piggybacks off of that. Do you think, you might have said this, do you think that like class should be offered like in high schools, or do you think it should be like if parents want their kids to learn about this, they should sign them up for like a course, or how do you think that should be offered?
I feel like the best way for it to be offered and for it to reach the most people is to have it be in the school system. The biggest problem that I can see with the school system approach is that there are also people who are abstinent. Obviously, they're definitely the minority, but I think it's a class that it can be talked about in a way that can be professional and they can be given information, but not necessarily like feed the idea. Because I feel like when people talk about contraceptives, it's more of like, oh, it's okay if you use this, or it's okay if you are taking this. And so I feel like if they were to maybe change the verbiage and kind of change the outlook of the class, then I think that would make it a lot more substantial if it was in a high school setting. The problem is, even though the Roe versus Wade is a national law, I feel like this would have to be implemented through your own community and local governments or through the state, that it shouldn't be a federal government issue. I think it should be more of the states that should make it mandatory. But so then each state can kind of personalize it in their own way. So it's more of just having the states and that legislature be on board to doing something like that.
Okay. So I know that last week and the week before, Sister Hubert has mentioned that we're supposed to try to take things from a secular viewpoint and not just from a gospel viewpoint. So I'm going to come at you a different way, and I'm going to say, okay, the federal government has already mandated that birth control is free. You no longer have to pay for your birth control, so that those females or women who don't have access to money or don't have a regular job can still protect their body and prevent themselves from getting pregnant, regardless of what their choices are as to whether they wish to abstain or not, or whether they wish to participate. We also hear the stories and see the pictures of the big giant bowls at Planned Parenthood that are overflowing with many different condoms of different colors and different sizes that are supposed to be made available for people to get free of charge. They can just walk in, grab a handful, and go, so that young men can make an active choice to do something to protect themselves. Is this something that government needs to get involved in and mandate some type of birth control for men other than condoms, where guys and girls are taking these pills to prevent unwanted pregnancy because we as a society believe that it's okay for people to run out and have sex with whoever they want, whenever they want, wherever they want, and therefore we need to protect it in a different fashion? Is that something that you would see going forward as well?
I feel like to kind of step back a little bit, we kind of need to move away a little bit of just abortion and kind of move towards the emotional and physical effects of sexual promiscuity, because there isn't just unwanted pregnancy, there's STDs, there's a lot of emotional effects when it comes to having a relationship that's all physical, but there's nothing really emotional that happens. There's a lot of there's a lot of emotional things that go on as well as physical that don't include pregnancy. And so I think from the standpoint of having more available contraceptives, I don't really feel like that's going to fix the problem of abortion, because people were really doing it anyway. And so I think by having this mandatory class that they would need to take, they would talk more about like the effects and the consequences of sexual promiscuity, because even if you use contraceptives, they can still get STDs, and they still have the emotional traumatizing effects of those certain acts. So does that kind of answer your question?
It does.
A little bit.
Made you think.
I have a question on how would you get parents involved? Because today a lot of parents are just fine with their teenagers having sex, and they'll provide them with the birth control. So how would you get parents on board with something like that? Or, parents will approve of the abortion or whatever for their child, which in some states they don't even have to, but,
I feel like that's a good question. I don't really have a good answer for that, of how parents can get involved in that. To me, I just can't really understand that parents wouldn't really care about that. And so I think it's hard from this perspective to kind of try to find ways that they will be more involved and to actually care. I think mainly if they know what is being taught and or what is being taught in the school with this class, that maybe that some community members and some parents would get on board more when talking about the consequences of sexual promiscuity. So I know that's not a very good answer.
I guess do you think that maybe some parents need to be educated on that? Even like on child development, and how, hey, your child is not really mentally capable of making these decisions and thinking about the consequences. You need to help them.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. I think that that's something that would definitely help if there was like a parent class that was associated for parents with teenagers. I don't know exactly the best way to implement that, because that would have to be more of a community level rather than a school level or a public school level. So I definitely agree that would definitely help, because if parents are more aware, then they're going to help influence those, shouldn't say morals, but those standards a little bit, because they understand the consequences more. So anyway, I know that's not a good answer. I haven't really thought about what.
No, it was a hard question too. I mean, it was just, I thought about that, how some parents, just, they're okay with that kind of stuff, and probably not most parents that we associate with, but in society in general.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
We done beating up Emily?
I'm done being beaten up.
All right.
That's what
You
you're
did
asking.
a great job.
Yeah, you did awesome.
You've all done so well so far.
Here we go. I'm going to
The
tank it.
pressure's on.
Yeah, I'm going to tank it. Hello, my name is Andre Sagnamini, and I'm here today to speak to you about the dangers and prevalence of sex trafficking. I've been employed as a police officer for the last 18 years and have had the unfortunate opportunity to be involved in a sex trafficking case personally. Imagine a young 14-year-old girl by the name of Barbara. Barbara goes to your local high school. She has been involved in cheer, theater, 4-H, and wants to be a veterinarian. Now, picture Barbara going to the mall one night with her friends. She's supposed to call her parents later to come and pick her up. Barbara's parents never get that phone call. They call her phone, and it rings and rings and goes to voicemail. They leave messages, and Barbara does not call back. Eventually, calls start going straight to voicemail, which tells them that her phone battery is dead or the phone has been turned off. They use their ability to check on the phone's last known GPS location and find that it is several miles away from the mall where Barbara has no reason to be. They contact her friends who tell them that Barbara went to the bathroom during the movie and never came back. Now the true nightmare begins. How would you feel if Barbara was your daughter, your friend? Police are called. Cameras at the mall are located and video footage reviewed. Barbara is seen leaving in the company of two men. No outside video camera captures the vehicle they leave in or any license plate information. Barbara is not found that night, that week, or even that month. Barbara is finally located 3 months later in Oklahoma. She is only located by chance when a local police department receives tips about a house which appears to have way too much foot traffic and vehicle traffic in the evenings. Police suspect a residence being used for drug sales, but instead find a house filled with 10 young women being sold for sex. According to the National Human Trafficking Hotline in Texas, 847 calls this year have resulted in 455 sex trafficking cases that have been found, stopped, and adjudicated. How many calls have not been made which would have resulted in a larger number of cases being located and solved? Have you ever had one of those feelings about something? Something not being right? Did you call to report it? Take time out of your day, listen to that feeling, call the number 1-888-373-7888 or text 233-733 and make a difference in someone's life. The University of Texas at Austin has published the results of a study by the Institute on Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault showing that over 79,000 minors and youth are victims of sex trafficking, with 234,000 adults being the victims of labor trafficking, for a total of over 313,000 victims of human trafficking in Texas alone. With Texas having a population of 28.3 million people, this translates to 1 in every 100 people being either a victim of some type of trafficking or involved in some type of sex trafficking. Do you see 100 people during your day? If you do, there is a high probability that one of the people you have seen is either a victim or involved in some type of human trafficking on one level or another. Become familiar with the different signs of human trafficking by visiting the human trafficking website provided by the state of Texas at texasattorneygeneral.gov, Initiatives Human Trafficking. Once you have done so, program your phone with the hotline number or the text number and start reporting those things that you find suspicious. Barbara and her parents will thank you for your efforts, even though they may never know who you are. Thank you. Go. Open to questions.
So one of my questions, you said go to the website to look for them, but one of the questions I had is what signs do we look for? Because like, I think that I don't know, I might think, oh, that's a little weird, but how do I
And that's
know?
honestly what it comes down to. When you think something is a little odd, it usually is. It can be kids that are out and about with somebody who doesn't appear to be a parent. It can be kids that are unwashed, unkempt, multiple groups of kids that have a supervisory individual with them, and you can tell that it's not a school kid, or they're not all wearing the same T-shirt from a daycare center or a youth activity camp. There are so many different signs of youths. Somebody will be talking to somebody and an adult will walk up and take the person by the hand and walk them away physically so they don't have an opportunity to talk to another youth of their own age. Yes, that may be a father who is preventing his daughter from talking to a boyfriend who's been abusive or he doesn't want the girl hanging out with, and it may not. It may be a female that is involved, that has been taken and kidnapped for sex trafficking, and that is her captor who is moving her from one location to the other. You can't find out But if you call somebody and a police officer shows up on scene, I'm going to be able to verify whether that's dad and daughter or whether these two people have no reason to be together. But if we don't get the call, we never get the opportunity to find out. So it's important for everyone to notice those little odd things that happen and to report them so we can go and take action.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry, go ahead, Chloe.
Oh, sorry. So this like topic is terrifying to me, and all of your statistics about like Texas and stuff, that's terrifying because I live in Texas. But what you might have mentioned this and I might have missed it, but what is the government doing to regulate this issue or to fix the issue?
Yeah, there is regulation already in place. It's a law to kidnap somebody. It's a law to use a minor. There are pimpering, pandering, prostitution, child labor laws. I mean, there are laws that are already in place. The question right now is not the difficulty of the law. When we find somebody, it's the family needs to be educated that this is occurring and stop allowing their children to go places where this kind of activity occurs. And in addition to that, we need the eyes of the public to notify us when these things are happening so we know where to go and where to investigate. You know, I don't mind going on 100 calls that turn out to not be valid if I find one that is valid because of those 100 I've gone on. That one call, the difference that we're going to make in that person's life is more than worth the rest of the time that we spend, because the rest of the time we're driving around writing speeding tickets anyway. It's not like we're actively out there arresting it's not taking us away from doing something else that's more important, if you understand what I'm saying. We need people to be willing to get involved in their community.
So I actually had the same question as Shauna, but kind of to go off that, when you give a tip, is there anything like, let's say it wasn't sex trafficking, do you get like a fake tip like on your record? Like, oh, that
No.
person gave me a fake tip. Like, how does that work? You know what I mean?
There are and I'm not sure about the number I listed here and the text number that I listed here, because I don't receive those directly. But I know that if you call a local police department, which is more, you can do that instead of calling these lines here. You can always tell a local police department that you wish to remain anonymous and you don't want to get involved, but you saw this and you felt it was suspicious. Now, when an officer does come out where there is a person who has said, I wish to remain anonymous, we can only investigate so far before we have exhausted our opportunity or our ability to do anything. When you're willing to provide information and give a phone number or a name, and we come out and we're looking for something and we can't find it, and we have an opportunity to call you back, and you can then provide maybe more information or maybe something that you saw that happened after you hung up the phone the first time, but you weren't willing to call back. You know, you call in and you say, okay, I see a guy and a girl and this is the activity that's going on. It kind of looks like he's dragging her away and she really doesn't want to go with him. So the officer arrives in the area and says, I can't find those people. Call the reporting party back and find out if there's any more information. Oh, yeah, he was a white gentleman with a mustache wearing glasses and a red polo shirt, and they got into a white van that was parked over here by the Krispy Kreme donuts, and they drove over that way, you know, and so the officer is able to drive that way, and hey, look, he finds a white van behind the Burger King parking lot that's next to the Krispy Kreme, and look, the engine's running, and he goes over and he knocks on it, and there's your guy who dragged the female away with the female and a guy having sex with her right there in the van, you know, because they're not meaning to be crude, but they're pimping her out to the truckers and the people that are driving by and hanging out at the gas stations. that's information that the officer wouldn't have had without the ability to call you back. But the whole idea of the boy who cried wolf does not exist in law enforcement circles anymore.
That's good to know. Thank you.
You're muted. Okay.
Sorry. Thanks. So you talked about, was her name Barbara? The
Yes.
name that
Well,
you used?
not really, but that's the name.
Yes. Yes. So you talked about how there were security cameras, but there wasn't enough to show where she went or what car she went into.
Yes.
Do you feel like that's something that the local government or communities can do in order to enhance their security, or do you feel like that's kind of a waste of time in this kind of position or waste of finances? Do you feel like that would help when it comes to trying to find people in these sex trafficking incidents?
Cameras and video footage has greatly enhanced the ability of police officers to do their jobs and to find things. And I don't want to get in the habit of saying they say, but there is a study that says that the average human being is recorded 18 times a day right now as we go about our daily business, because you pass ATM cameras, you pass cameras on light posts, you pass cameras at businesses, cameras at apartments, cameras on people's residences, somebody taking a cell phone video on the street and you happen to walk by. Every one of us is recorded at least 18 times nowadays per day. The ability for law enforcement to have access to the video footage that's out there already is not something that is going to be regulated. Our country was founded on individual freedoms and the ability for people to have their rights and property protected, and your video recordings are your property and your rights. It does help us in the sense that we can go and find a business or find where she went and try to get information, but the video becoming 1984 and having video cameras on every street corner and society being tracked and low jacked and everything else, that is not the answer. The answer is to continue with the punishments we already have in place for the people that commit the crimes, and for the public to become informed and knowledgeable of what's occurring so that we can get the information and find the people who are committing the crimes.
So from what you're saying, it almost sounds like it's much more beneficial to use people who have seen something suspicious, and if they call in, that's much more useful than looking at a security video.
Absolutely.
Okay. Perfect. That's good to know. It's good information for me to know and keep my eye out.
Yeah. I mean, I'll throw this out to you. There's 4 of you guys here. How many times have you been driving down the road and you see a fight, you see an accident, you see 2 people arguing that might be getting physical, and you think one of the other 100 people driving by is going to call it in, I'm not going to pick up my phone? I bet every one of you can say, I've done it at least once. Okay? Pick up your phone. Call. You don't know if those other 99 people are saying somebody else is going to call.
Then you get 99 calls.
That's what our dispatch
For the
operation
same thing.
The dispatcher picks up the phone and they say, yes, we're aware of it. Thank you very much for calling. And that's it.
There's been a few times where I've had to do that, or I just felt like I needed to. And sometimes they're like, well, this is because I think I said I'm sure you've gotten a ton of calls already. There's this chair in the middle of the highway. It's just really dangerous. And they're like, we haven't heard anything about it. And I'm like, wow, because I did not want to make that call, which meant they wouldn't have heard about it if I hadn't called either. So, and then also I've made a call before and they said yeah, we've gotten a few calls about it, but thank you so much for calling.
Mm-hmm.
Continue to be on the lookout for things
Yep.
like that.
Nobody's ever going to say, don't call us and tell us about a problem.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
No, I think you did a really great job.
Yeah, you guys all did a really great job. That was
Well, all right.
interesting.
Once again, Emily, I'm sorry I lost the middle of your speech. Just make sure and upload, obviously, your written speech to Sister Hubert, and I'll make sure and put in there that it was my fault because I was recording at the time. But I think with everybody giving you stellar marks, I don't see any problem with getting a good grade on this.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Everybody okay if I say a closing?
Yep.
Okay. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity we've had to be here tonight. We thank you for technology, even when it glitches. We thank you for the opportunity we have to part of each other's lives as we go through this class and as we go through this learning process. We ask you to be with our families and to bless them and to keep them strong and healthy. We ask a special blessing upon Emily today at this time as well for her sharing, and that she may know that we love her, we love her husband, and that we send her support in whatever way we can. We ask for these things at this time in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
So
Thank
I said I would lead the next discussion, which I thought was going to be today, but next week I'm going to be traveling. I'm going to be driving to Utah for Thanksgiving, even though it's a week before Thanksgiving. But anyway, so I may or may not be able to make our meeting.
Okay.
So if somebody else can lead the discussion if I don't show up.
We'll figure it out.
I can do it, Shauna, if you're not here. I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
Or I can do the journaling, whatever people want me to do. I'm happy to do either.
I think I can journal next week. It's been a while since I've done it.
Okay. Oh, and also, Andre, specifically, we actually are pregnant right now. So this is the longest we've been pregnant. So we're hoping this one sticks.
Thank you for telling us. And
So,
we'll continue to pray.
Yay.
Thanks.
Yes. Hopefully it all works out. Yay, that's exciting.
Same here. We found out we're having a little boy. So